Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Ventura Collective's LinkedIn Live. We will be discussing the Human Resource Management, Diversity and Inclusion ISO 30415-2021 standard and sharing with you all the DISM certification based on the ISO 30415-2021 standard that Ventura Collective offers in partnership with Inclusion Score. My name is Ana Maria de Mesón Cornejo. I am here with Linda Espinosa Valencia, co-founder of Ventura Collective. We are currently on the land of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation and the Mi'kmaq Nation, also known as Montreal and Halifax. I will be sharing my screen. Okay, I see that we can all see this. So Ventura Collective, we are a justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion consulting firm. We understand that the current systemic barriers need systemic solutions in response, and we recognize that systemic change is vital in creating equitable workplaces for our communities and for ourselves. We want to foster communal prosperity and well-being. We harness the collective joy, strength, inner and outer work, and our collective power to sustain equity and liberation. Linda and I are also members of the Standards Council of Canada, SCC, where we will be working to promote, sustain, improve ISO 30415 standards internationally.
I was on mute. Thank you, Ana Maria, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And right now we are going to show you something that you already know. How does equity, diversity, and inclusion looks in organizations right now? We usually see a reactionary approach. Something happens and everybody, immediately call an equity, diversity, and inclusion consultant, or, we need training. We need to fix our employees. We need training. Or it's performative, where it only lives on the PR pieces on our website, but really it doesn't have a systemic approach. It's based on good intentions. So there's no KPIs, there's no strategy, there's no measurable outcomes, and of course, there's no budget. And it's only localized to one area of the organization, either in HR or in the diversity or culture department of the organization. So through this, Ventura Collective was looking for a way to really change that and find a framework that really focuses on systemic change in organizations, and that goes beyond just, the monthly inclusive days or only about quotas or diversity. And that's how we came across the International Standard Organization and their standards. But first, I would like to talk about this important quote from Thomas Fioretti, which is the head of Zurich Resilience Solutions in North America, that says, insufficient attention to diversity and inclusion has become a business risk that can have a direct impact both on organizations' financial performance and its workforce. So it's moving beyond just the right thing to do, moving beyond the benefits of having equity, diversity, and inclusion, but taking in consideration the business risk that is not to have equity, diversity, and inclusion in organizations.
Thank you, Linda. So we want to share with you a little bit about the International Standard Organization, ISO. It was founded in 1947. It's an independent, non-governmental organization with 167 members, national standard bodies. based on Geneva, Switzerland. And it develops international standards to support innovation in all industries. The ISO has developed more than 22,000 standards in industries such as IT, health, manufacturing, and it provides solutions to global challenges. In particular, the Human Resource Management ISO 30415-2021 standard is relevant to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, four of them, 4 out of the 17. So gender equality, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, and reduced inequality. It is also guided by the principles of human rights at work by the International Labour Organization. This particular standard was developed over 10 years, obviously with an international lens, given that the ISO is an international organization. And most importantly, as Linda was sharing with us, the quote from Zurich, the insurance industry in Europe and the US are already adopting diversity and inclusion ISO 30415-2021 as the golden standard for corporate D&I. For example, Lloyd's of London, Zurich, and AG Gallagher are already underwriting policies based on the standard 30415-2021. So as Linda was mentioning earlier, this standard absolutely provides a company-wide framework. It touches upon governance, HR, product delivery, and supply chain. And as we see on the slide, focuses on governance, leaders, the labor force, and all constituents. It's for all sizes of organization, for-profit and non-for-profit, and as we said it before, for all industries. This particular standard, 30415-2021, sustains DI prerequisites. It has roles and responsibilities that are specific to actions and measures to sustain the policies that an organization develops towards equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's measurable and scalable and recognizes that every organization is different. By doing all this, it actually sustains equity, diversity, and inclusion. The sustainability part of EDI, of equity, diversity, and inclusion, is vital. And this standard promotes that sustainability.
If we think about the current state of EDI that we saw in previous slides, you can see that the ISO actually touches every one of those areas, right? It shows a roadmap to follow. It gives roles and responsibilities. It gives you KPIs. So it moves away from only these good intentions to really start moving into a systemic change within an organization, in every part of the organization.
Exactly. Thank you, Linda.
So now let's talk about the benefits of having an internationally recognized standard. Thank you. As you will see here, it allows businesses to remain at the forefront of the industry, especially talking about an organization like the ISO, the International Standard Organization. Their standards are usually the benchmark of any kind of process regarding an organization. They have standards for cybersecurity, they have standards for manufacturing, they have standards for so many processes for organizations. And when an organization is recognized ISO certified, it means that it's at the top level of whatever process we're talking about. This ISO 30415, that's why it's so breaking, the mold of everything, because having a standard, an internationally recognized standard for diversity and inclusion, is going to move us to this systemic change that we're looking for, versus just only training or only recognizing equity, diversity, and inclusion in our websites. So it's going to move the needle to systemic change, and it's going to help organizations to remain to the forefront of their industries. Ensure the products and services can be sold worldwide and shorten the business cycle. It makes the market access easier by reducing compliance costs and time, and proves that products and services meet the current national and international standards. And we don't have to talk too much about this because there's so much research out there. We can quote so many different organizations that over and over and over talk about all the benefits that equity, diversity, and inclusion in organizations bring, right? This is very important, but this is something that if we only talk about the benefits, it seems to not be a strong enough case, right? Even though it brings, like more markets, better decision making, it seems to not be enough. So what can we add to this mix? What can we add at this conversation that is going to be even more impactful for our clients, for organizations to understand?
Thank you, Linda. So what are the costs and risks, right, of not implementing international standards like the ISO 30415/2021? That is what we could add to the conversation, as Linda was saying. In this slide, we're showing the employee turnover data, right? It's already more than 1 trillion per year. And in organizations that are average size, right, a 100-person organization where the average salary is 50,000, the turnover cost can be between 600,000 to more than 2 million per year. We wanted to focus on this because a lot of organizations, and I think the intention behind, right, having an EDI strategy is to focus on the diversity part of our employees, the diversity part of our organization. So organizations are going to be focused on quotas or numbers, which is a mistake. It's limited. What we have known already is that when organizations only focus on that outcome, well, if there's no policy and structure to support all the diverse talent, the talent that exists already in society from equity to communities, the attrition increases because we don't only need to just bring everyone in, we need to know how to sustain and how to create paths that promote equal pay, a promotion path, really engaging people in our organization. So yes, here is the quote again from Thomas Fioretti. And an extra quote, an extra data point on the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission data, only from 2020, we're already 2024, right? That reported $439 million in fines from discrimination charges on lawsuits filed against employers. So companies that make meaningful investments in DI won't just avoid the fines. They will be employing profitable and beneficial business practices. This is another quote from Fortune and Zurich. Over to you, Linda.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Yeah, and as Zurich says, companies need to be aware of the inherent risk to their board members and their personal assets. In addition to monetary compensation from the targeted corporations, recent lawsuits have sought to replace board members, claw back their compensation, and revise incentive plans. This it just shows how, even though we hear all this rhetoric saying, equity, diversity, inclusion needs to be illegal. We shouldn't be talking about this. This is not optional anymore. It is really affecting organizations, the bottom line, and their insurance. This is going to be moving the needle forward for equity, diversity, and inclusion, because the insurance companies, as we mentioned it before, they're already adopting the ISO 30415 as the golden standard for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And they're going to be asking their organizations, what are you doing? Like you, my client, that I'm going to have to be paying all these settlements for you not having equity, diversity, and inclusion as a systemic way in your organization. What are you doing to change that? What are you doing so I'm not losing money anymore? So this becomes beyond these good intentions. It's beyond this, oh, I want to do it because it's the moral thing to do, which we know it is. Let's not forget that. But it is moving away to being a risk management tool as well. And it's going to become a requirement for corporations that want to get insured, which is everyone, for them to be insured by their insurance companies, as we see here by Zurich. And you will think, but Linda, that's the US, like there's a lot of litigation here. In there. We don't have that kind of litigation in Canada. Well, in 2021, the Ontario Court confirmed that a contractual limitations on termination are unenforceable if the employee has been subjected to harassment. And in 2022, a jury awarded a former employee $1.5 million Canadian dollars in punitive damages. And for those who know, or maybe you won't know, but in 2021, there's a class action lawsuit against the federal government for anti-Blackness for their employees. And an update on that is that Canada has spent over $8 million fighting this Black action, against their workers, their Black employees in court. So the message that we want to put out there as well, and for equity, diversity, and inclusion professionals and consultants, is that organizations need to understand that they're going to have to spend money. Either they spend it investing in creating workplaces that are equitable, that people feel they belong, or they're going to have to spend it in litigation. I think this investment is better spent in creating, work spaces that are equitable and for everyone.
Thank you, Linda. And we see that according to the National Standard of Canada on Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, that was published and active in 2013, a safe system of work, a safe place, a safe workplace is already firmly embedded in Canadian law. And we see that this slide shows the standard that I mentioned, the National Standard of Canada on Psychological Health and Safety. And it touches all the different areas, right? Occupational health and safety statutes, employment contract law, labor law, tort law, human rights law, workers' compensation statutes, and employment standards legislation. What we appreciate of ISO standards is that because they are an international organization, a non-governmental organization, it really supports all the initiatives that different legislations in different countries uphold towards equity. So a standard like the National Standard of Canada on Psychological Health and Safety is well supported by standards like the ISO 30415-2021. Over to you, Linda, to share with the participants a little bit about our Diversity and Inclusion Service Management certification.
Perfect. Thank you, Ana Maria. Well, now we talked about the ISO. We talked about, what are the benefits of equity, diversity, and inclusion? What are the benefits to implement a international standard? and what are the risks and costs of not implementing a company-wide framework such as the ISO 30415 2021. And we have a question actually that I would like to put here before I move on, because I think this has to do with what we're doing right now. So this is from Mitchell Manoki. I apologize if I'm totally mispronouncing your name. They said, hi there, I would like to know if there's any organization in Canada already adopting the standard. Also, is there a minimum amount of employees the organization should have to adopt the ISO? Many thanks. So this standard is pretty new. As I said, 2021, at the beginning of 2021 is when it was released. And people ready to consult, ready to help organizations in their journey to start applying the ISO is even newer, right? Ana Maria and myself, we took our certification in 2022, and we became partners of Inclusion Corporation, which are the creators of this certification, to bring this certification to Canada. So actually, Ana Maria and myself were one of the first consultants able to help organizations in this journey. So right now, we're working with a handful of organizations that are ready to start working in this journey, but it's not a lot because it's brand new, right? And we don't have a lot of consultants ready to help organizations. And that's why we decided to bring in partnership with Inclusion Score, Inclusion Corporation, this certification with the Canadian perspective and an international lens. Because even though, yes, we're in Canada and we have a set of local environment, we work in an international way, right? We work with organizations around the world. So yes, we touch in the Canadian perspective, but we go beyond that to talk about international law, US law, like we touch on everything. Next one, Ana Maria, por favor.
Thank you, Linda. And before we move forward, I want you all to remind, we were talking about the importance, as Linda was saying, on bringing that certification in the context of more of a Canadian legal context, right? So it is important to remember that there is already, as we've mentioned, law protecting employees from work-related harassment, right? So how are Canadian organizations compliant with this law and with the amendments to the Employment Equity Act that recently passed? So, for example, employers are required by the Canadian Labor Code to develop their own anti-harassment policies. That means that organizations are, as this is saying, responsible to creating proper policies. The ISO 30415 standard creates the vehicle, the framework, in order to create such policies that actually protects and follows Canada Labor Code, follows Employment Equity Act, that are already legislations that organizations must follow. So I'm going to go into the next slide. So what is the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management Certification based on the ISO 30415 2021? So this certification will introduce the standard to equity, diversity, and inclusion professionals in Canada. And what this service management framework will offer is the tools and the understanding and the capability for EDI professionals to standardize in a way, right, and create policies and structures that are similar to any other services managed in an organization, like accounting, legal, information security, quality, etc. And it will provide participants with the knowledge and skills to accompany an organization in its journey to develop a company-wide strategy, upholding the ISO 30415, minimizing the risk associated with an absence of EDI structure in return.
Ana Maria, I want to highlight this comment from Rajesh Engel. Once again, I apologize if I'm totally butchering your name. But it says, they're not adequately trained staff to handle the AI. It's an ignored task of HR. And obviously, we are equity, diversity, and inclusion professionals, and we never want to hear it's like, oh, you're not trained well or anything like that. And it's not that, but there's not for the longest time, there hasn't been a standardization of how to apply equity, diversity, and inclusion. So what we have been seeing for the past many years, it's about the training part, right? How to train people to not be racist, how to train people to, be aware of their biases, how to train people, like always training people, right? And leaving behind the important work that is to make this a systemic change, right? We move after the murder of George Floyd. We went heavily on training. We've been heavily on diversity, like quotas, right? We need to hire Black people. We need to hire more women. We need to hire people with disabilities. But the structure stayed the same. The structure didn't change. So of course, the retention is not there. We're seeing the tokenization of people and the harm that brings to employees who belong to equity deserving, equity due communities. So this is moving away from just the training, just the individualized racism or ableism, to move to systemic change with policy, where we're changing the way there were structured organizations, so the talent can actually stay, so the talent can actually thrive, and it's not only the quota.
Absolutely. Thank you, Linda, and thank you everyone for your comments. So Linda, over to you to speak about the course structure.
Okay, so this is a six-week course. It's a hybrid course. We have asynchronous learning that happens in Mighty Networks, and we have weekly 90-minute live sessions featuring internationally recognized lecturers that happen on Tuesdays for 6 weeks from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yep. And next, please.
Thank you, Linda. And for the course schedule?
The course schedule is the first week is an overview of the program. That is an optional as attendance to this. We just talk about Mighty Networks, what you can expect, things like that. That's going to happen on February 23rd. Week 1, we're going to talk about applying maturity models in organizations. That happens on March 5th. Week 2 is understanding the 32 risk domains. That is actually the meat or the protein. I shouldn't say the meat, because there's some people who don't eat meat and still get a lot of nutritious foods. That is the protein of the ISO, right? These 32 risk domains that we need to address in organizations. On week 3, we talk about the 27 types of diversity that the DISM, or Diversity and Inclusion Service Management, considers. And week 4, identifying actions, measures, and possible outcomes for the equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy. Week 5, which is super important as well, is one of the biggest parts of the ISO standard having a domino effect, that is the supply chain and other stakeholders. And the final week is week 6, that is a case study. And of course, we prepare everyone for the final examination. It will start, we give everyone around 10 days to take the final exam. And it will be on April 9.
Thank you, Linda. And after this presentation, we are inviting everyone to share their comments and questions. And we have a lot to share with you, and a little bit more information regarding the supply chain and other constituents in organizations, specifically the ESG reporting and how that connects to the ISO. So just wanted to name that before we continue. But have it as a little note that we can definitely address those points that a lot of people are very interested in after we finish the slides. The course requirements, we absolutely require for the participants in these cohorts to have previous knowledge of EDI concepts, either through a certification or through experience at work gained at work by working actively on EDI, being committees, grassroots organizations, etc. Our participants need access to a computer with internet and a commitment to cover asynchronous online learning and the homework for about 2 to 4 hours per week, and commit to joining at least 4 of the 6 90-minute weekly live sessions. We say this because really the fact that we meet every week really does bring a lot of value to our learning and our sharing and our community building. So we really encourage people to do that, to at least join 4 out of the 6. We understand that we have many, many things going on, but the value of that and really what we gain, all of us, by sharing and creating these spaces that are live is really important and really valuable. And as Linda was saying, also the minimum score of 75 in the final examination. So we will continue sharing some of the feedback that we've received from our cohort participants on this first DISM certification.
Before that, Ana Maria, I would like to address a comment here.
Yes.
From Maria Isabel Fernandez. Thank you for being here. Said, this exam is to get the ISO certification, right? No. So people or consultants can get ISO certification. The certification are for organizations. The certification that you get is the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management certification based on the ISO, right? So this certification gives you the skill to help an organization and help that organization eventually get certified ISO. But individuals can get ISO certification, right? So I just want to make that abundantly clear because we always get the same question. So now I'm a certified ISO person. It's like, no, like the people, consultants can get ISO certified. That is only for organizations.
Okay, thank you for that question. I'm gonna start sharing again. And here are some of the quotes that I was mentioning from our cohort. So this is Masika Mahavir, the DISM ISO 30415-2021 is like a GPS for organizations diving into diversity, equity, and inclusion. It eradicates the guesswork, providing a clear roadmap. The course materials and facilitators led by Linda and Ana Maria were top-notch. Brace yourselves, the DISM ISO framework is set to revolutionize the world of DEI. Thank you, Masika. Masika is the CEO of Diversity Nexus.
And she's here. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you for joining, Masika. Here there is another quote by Leandra Stanley. Please, Linda, over to you.
I feel weird reading this.
Because it talks about us.
It is clear that Ana Maria and Linda are both extremely knowledgeable about diversity and inclusion work, as well as they're compassionate and deeply invested in the work that they're doing and the people that they're working with and for. Their instruction style was approachable, clear, and deliberate, and they made what felt very daunting seem much more manageable. In a field that often feels a bit like a Wild West, Ana Maria and Linda helped introduce me and the rest of the cohort to this system that streamlines and makes DEI processes more achievable and equitable.
Thank you, Leandra. Leandra Stanley, Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Comscore. This is Taliesin Oh, divine. The DISM certification with Ventura Collective is fantastic. Having the opportunity to bring an international standard and frame to a Canadian lens was very helpful in providing us with useful context and examples to use within our work. Linda and Ana Maria are exceptional teachers whose support was clear from the very beginning and guide us throughout our entire journey together.
Thank you, Taliesin. You're here too. Thank you for the support. Simone says, I'm grateful for the effort they invested in tailoring the content to a Canadian perspective while still incorporating relevant information from the US and around the globe. The course space was well balanced, allowing me to manage both work and family responsibilities while maintaining a focus on continuous learning. Lina and Ana Maria's evident passion and knowledge were instrumental in creating an environment where cohorts could learn, acquire new skill sets, and thrive in the EDI space. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you, Simone. And Rola Helu says, Linda and Ana Maria from Ventura Collective were able to create a safe learning environment where we were able to ask all the questions and learn from each other to better use the DISM assessment tool. They had the vision to bring a concrete, structured approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion to Canada. This will change how we do EDI and will lead to more inclusive and safe work environments for all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rola. Thank you so much. Okay, over to you, Linda.
So now about the investment, right? It's like, this sounds great. Like I might be interested. How much do I have to invest in this certification? The certification investment is $1,600 plus tax per person. We do have available group discounts, as it says in there, but individuals from Equity Do communities, please contact us if this investment is a potential block for you to join. It is very important that we are talking about equity. We are offering this in an equitable way, and we can come up with ways to support Equity Do community members to join this. This is not meant to be inclusive. This is not meant to be just for some. We want EDI to be standardized. We want EDI to move to systemic change. And for that, Equity Do communities need to be included. They need to be at the center of it. So if you belong to Equity Do communities, please reach out and we'll be happy to talk to you.
Thank you, Linda. And yes, we are offering a promo for our LinkedIn Live attendees. So the first 2 people to fill up an enrollment form will receive $600 off to make an investment of 1,000 Canadian dollars. And the following 5 people to fill up our enrollment roll will receive $400 off to a total of 1,200 Canadian dollars.
I am placing the link to the form right now for those interested. Please share it with people that you know that might be interested in this. We will be using a first come, first serve approach to this. Just 1 second, trying to send it. And if someone wants to enroll and they can't make the payment, we will go through the list to make sure that we are awarding all these 7 promos to people who really want to join the second cohort in Canada. We're going to leave that for a bit. If Ana Maria, you want to stop sharing, and I have some questions here that I would like to address.
Yeah.
Just 1 second.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Janine Graham, thank you for being here. There's something that I'm wondering about is how the certification program finds the balance between an international standardization of EDI and cross-cultural diverse decolonized perspectives and approaches to equity, diversity, and inclusion? I love this question so much. We do. We are coming from a place that we understand that colonization, white supremacy is the water that we swim in. It's not the shark, it's the water. So we understand that, even the International Standard Organization can come up with these, colonized ways of doing things. The beauty of the standards is that it was created with people from around the world. It wasn't just created with US base or Canadian base or European base. It was an international effort. Two, the standards tells you the things that you should have, kind of like the policies that you should have, the structure that you should have, but it doesn't tell you how. And that's where the consultant or the equity, diversity, inclusion professional comes at play to bring this cultural awareness, to bring this decolonized version of this standard, right? So the standard itself is very malleable to the needs of each organization, to the country or territory where it's placed. That's one of the reasons we adapted it here in Canada, and we brought it because we saw the need to include Indigenous resurgence, Indigenous truth and reconciliation within our scope, right? So this standard allows consultants to bring that mindset and that lens to their work. I hope I answered that question. Do you want to add something, Ana Maria?
Thank you, Linda. No, you covered it, and thank you for the question.
Okay, anything else? Can you share a brochure also that illustrates this information? Absolutely. You can visit our website, Ana Maria, if you want to put our the link again, and we will. I don't know if we can upload here in this, but we do have a brochure. You can reach out to us through an inbox, and we'll send you the PDF that we have for this. Yeah. Okay, let me check.
Thank you.
Here.
Yeah. Everyone, please feel free to connect through us on LinkedIn. We're very active on this platform. Message us, and we will happily send information by email or directly through LinkedIn.
Okay, so we have Michelle again, or Michelle, I don't know, how do you pronounce your name? I apologize. It says, also it seems you suggest adding this service to the HR department, but we know how many issues come from HR departments related to you. Any comments at this point? We actually are not suggesting to, currently that's how it works, right? It's very localized to HR. What the standard says is that equity, diversity, inclusion should be in every single part of the organization. Everyone should have a role in upholding and sustaining equity, diversity, and inclusion, from the governance all the way to your supply chain. And the beauty of the standard, again, is that it has a domino effect. So the ISO standard says, you're not a silo, you organization are not a silo. You belong to a community, you have suppliers. How are you helping to actually develop your suppliers to become more equitable, to become better workplaces, right? So it's not only about HR, it's about every single part of the organization and about how you are creating that domino effect with your supply chain.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, right, the particular ISO 30415-2021 standard does look and towards the four main areas of the organization that Linda was referring to, right? So it's governance, human resources, product and service delivery, and development, and supply chain, and other constituents. So absolutely, it takes away that tendency to place equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts only on HR. It's natural also that HR has a big chunk of the policies and structures around different programs. But that doesn't mean that it's only localized or that that's where it should be focused. It, like Linda was saying, it should be focused on all these areas. And the standard gives that type of framework, the general framework of how to develop these policies in all those main 4 areas.
And Rayesh, actually, we know that right now the certification for India is happening right now. We have a fellow DISM certified colleague that is from India that I think it's developing and partnering with Inclusion Corporation to develop this for India with the set of cultural needs of that environment. Like you mentioned, the caste system that exists and all that. On our side, we're actually developing the Latin American version of this certification as well. It's going to be in Spanish. So if you know people, they are in Latin America, they speak Spanish, and they would like to join, please tell them to contact us. We're going to start promoting that soon, because we are moving this around the globe. There's another certification happening in South Africa. There's another one in France. So this is moving because, as I mentioned, the insurance industry is seeing this as imperative. So it's not going to go away. It's just going to get more relevant, especially in a standardized way.
Thank you. And our colleague Indranil Sen is the one that is developing the certification in India. Please contact us through LinkedIn via message. We will be happily to share Indranil's LinkedIn profile so you can contact him directly.
Okay, let me check if I have any more questions. I'm gonna post the link. You might need to sign, because we're only allowing one answer for the form. You might need to sign into Gmail to be able to access the form, because I said we're only allowing one per person, one answer per person. So you might need to sign in if you have a Gmail account. As I said, sign in, even if you think you might not be the first or the second or something like that. We're going to go in correlation of the people. So you never know. You might be the person that we award this promo. Okay, let me double check here. Ana Maria, do you want to talk a little bit about ESG while I find more questions to answer?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, Linda. So I'm going to just take a little second to talk about environmental, social, and governance reporting now. So organizations, as we know, they have the responsibility to society, right? So for over 60 years, we have used ESG, right? Environmental, social, and governance criteria to measure organizational impact on society. The ISO 30415-2021 supports all of the ESG goals and responsibilities directly and cross-sectionally. We know that the ESG is heavily focused on environment, which is vital and crucial. And so is also now gaining a little bit more of attention, the social aspect of the ESG. So there is an article, ESG reporting is already required by Forbes, written by Jim DeLoach. So it explains that in January 2023, the so-called ESG 2.0 era is already in place. So it places new and substantial demands on finance groups. It also speaks about how European Union's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive took effect in January of 2023. And it's joining and it's expanding the ESG compliance rules and now is requiring standardization and verifiable reporting on ESG performance in most cases. For Canada, September 2024 is the public reporting deadline for Canada's largest banks and insurers under the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions and guided by the guideline B5 that sets out expectations for the sound management of climate-related risks for federally regulated financial institutions. And September 2025 is the public reporting deadline for the rest of the 350 federally regulated financial institutions. Again, these are reportings that are happening on regularly federally regulated institutions. The expectation is that ESG is going to be reported, is going to be mandatory for all other industries. But it's important to point out that already finance directors and investors, right, are requesting ESG reports, transparency, HR reporting and disclosure, and integrating reporting. So an ISO standard holds ESG's requirements, as we said, directly or cross-sectionally. Also, through our network of ISO, through our network of professionals that are directly working with international standard organization, and a conversation with David Simmons from the UK comes to mind. He was explaining and sharing with us that ESGs are what drove the recent European regulations regarding HR reporting and disclosure. And as we know now, also, every ISO standard must disclose which of the 17 UN sustainability goals it particularly supports. So again, specifically and directly related to ESGs. Also, the social component of ESGs, clearly tied to people and work environment, is sustained by HR ISO standards, such as the 30415-2021 and the 30414, which is particularly to human resources management. And Linda, do you want to talk a little bit about what we learned recently too, that triple bottom line concept?
Yes, thank you. Just to finish that piece, and then I want to address another question there. So, as right now we have the most intergenerational society, right? We still have boomers, we still have Gen X, have millennials, we have Gen Z, and we have Gen Alpha coming up. And millennials and some Gen Xers like us care about, human rights, care about moving away from extreme capitalism, care about the environment, right? And the investors in corporations are seeing that trend. And if they want to keep their organizations being successful, generating wealth, they're going to have to be paying attention to what this generation is saying, which is to care about these three bottom line, which is caring about the environment and caring about people or human rights as much as the bottom line. So that is the new way of looking at business. And a way to do that is the ESG and creating standardization for this reporting. And that's where the ISO 30415, the ISO 30414 come in place, right? To move this forward from just this capitalistic way of we have to get to the bottom line as much as we can and we don't care how, to really care about the sustainability of the environment as well as human rights at work. So that's some of the things that in our network with people around the world, we learn every day of these changes that are happening in Europe, they're happening in Brazil, where ESG is becoming more and more important, and how to standardize it and they're going to be looking at the ISO to do that. So I have another question from Michelle that says, yeah, this is great, but then, who is accountable for the adoption and implementation of this ISO? There's no one question there's not one answer to this, right? It depends on the organization, right? If the organization has a structure of EDI, a department, a chief, diversity officer, it could be that person. It could be the CEO. It even could be HR. What the standard brings is that they're not the only one responsible to do that. There's a democratization of a responsibility and risk within the organization when you are applying the ISO 30415. So what we've seen is so-and-so chief diversity officer got fired because they couldn't solve racism in 2 days, right? That's what we're trying to avoid, to put all the responsibility in one person. We want the responsibility of this across the organization. And of course, as we know, there's going to be leadership that is going to be in charge of sustain it, to keep it going. But that doesn't mean that they're the only ones. But everyone in the role, they actually have KPIs to uphold equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. And thank you for that question. And something to point out as well is that the DISM methodology, the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management methodology within the certification, offers also deeper clarification on specific roles and responsibilities and the actions and measures that the standard requires in order to, as Linda was saying, democratizing the responsibility within the organization to uphold equity, diversity, and inclusion. So, and again, it addresses all the constituents, right, within the organization and outside. So customers, employees, investors, suppliers, communities, and government. So just to add, there are specific roles. Again, I'm repeating myself, but it is important. There are specific roles and responsibilities and specific actions and measures that the standard is offering us to sustain this across the organization. So a company-wide, organization-wide framework.
And we have made it to the end. Thank you so much, everyone who joined. Thank you, whoever has enrolled so far. We'll reach out to you. And thank you for listening to us. This is a very important framework that we're bringing to Canada. It's brand new. We want it to be out there. We're not trying to gatekeep anything. We want this to become the way to create equity, diversity, and inclusion as a systemic change for organizations. Not as an ad hoc, not as a nice to have, not only training and, inclusion months, but really to make an impact. We see that when this doesn't happen, actually there's a death, life or death situations have we seen, lately. So we want to stop that. We want to move through systemic change and make a difference in the workplace.
Thank you, everyone.